Hello everybody, and welcome to Whiz, your family-friendly podcast where we discuss D&D Onslaught, Dice Masters, and HeroClix, and the other entertaining games made by WizKids. I'm WizDad, that rambunctious kobold that you keep ignoring, but yet I'm still here hitting you for 1 damage. Surely you'll take me out next time. I will be your guide for navigating the competitive and casual scenes of the WizKids Triforce of gaming. It's Onslaught Wednesday. Today we are talking all about treasure, looting, everything to do with treasure and looting, and the current equipment in the game, and kind of what you should be playing currently. But before we Scrooge McDuck our way into that pile of goodies, let's go over the WizKids Progress Report.
Kowalski, Progress Report.
Happy Frogmire Coven Day to everyone out there. Today is the release day of the Frogmire Coven expansion. If you're still on the fence about getting it, absolutely go pick it up. The minis in it are fantastic. The board itself is going to be vital, I think, going forward. We already saw it in the tournament scenarios. They're able to do so much more with the two different swamp maps that you get on the reversible cardboard map. So absolutely go get it, because I think if you're looking to play competitive, you're going to need that map anyway for practice, and for potentially like any scenarios that come out later. The Benefactor scenarios utilize the base kit. I would assume any further ones would, but they have also mentioned they don't want to, require people to get the expansion. So if you're on the fence about it, you can't afford it because it's the holidays, don't sweat it. But if it's in your budget, absolutely go get it. I think it's a great scenario. I went over all the scenarios the past couple of weeks. They are a lot of fun. I've played through them recently. It's just a great time. It honestly is. It's a very good expansion. I hope they do expansions like this going forward, because it doesn't feel like a requirement, but it adds something to kind of the base game. That's what expansions are, right? Like even if you don't want to play those scenarios, just the fact that it adds 2 maps, adds the unique minis, which could be used if you're using this for a D&D campaign or using this for your own scenarios. Those additional minis, the little bullywug guys, the toad guys, whatever they're called, Frogmire himself, the Frogmoth, I should say, and the hags, those are great, like, just in general. I do want to apologize again to my Dice Master listeners. I apologize for not putting out an episode on Monday. I'm really going to have to look at my schedule and figure out a better way of doing it, because unfortunately Mondays are just my busiest day by far of the week. Between running my kids back and forth between their classes and doing a bunch of things, I just honestly don't have a ton of time to record, and I try to record on the day. That way you get the most fresh news. So I'm thinking I need to just go ahead and start mentally devoting time over the weekend to record an episode. In this particular case, I was thinking of trying to record an episode with somebody for Dice Masters, because honestly, I have not been able to devote enough time to team building in Dice Masters as I should, because there's not a tournament I'm preparing for, and I've been playing in the HeroClix Broadcast Farewell Tour that I honestly just have not, between that and Onslaught, I just haven't thought about Dice Masters as much as I should if I'm going to be doing the podcast. So that's on me. I'll do better, and I will make sure that I record the right amount of episodes. Try to make sure that I cover Dice Masters better. I should. And I should just partake in some of the online tournaments that are going on. So once again, my apologies. I'm hoping before the next episode I can get a guest, and we could talk about Dice Masters as a whole, because I want to bring awareness to Dice Masters. That was the whole point of this podcast, was to bring awareness to the 3 games. We have everyone listening that might be a HeroClix fan, or might be an Onslaught fan, or might be a Dice Masters fan, and to show them the world that exists for all 3 games to work as a family. Because they can. All 3 games are vastly different, like enough difference to where it's a unique playing all 3, and you're not feel like, oh, Onslaught is just HeroClix for D&D, because it absolutely is not. HeroClix is not just Onslaught for superheroes. And Dice Masters is not literally just superhero, like HeroClix for dice. All 3 games are vastly different, and it's I love being able to play all three because it is very, very interesting. Like it keeps your interest between all three games. All that to be said, right now it's still the off season. It's going to be the off season, guys, until the end of the year. There's really not a ton coming out for all three games. Today's the last. Actually, Frogmire is the last Onslaught release for the year, which isn't that crazy. There's only 2 months left. And the Ancient Construct's supposed to last you multiple weeks, so keep that in mind as well. But then also the HeroClix, we've got Wheels of Vengeance coming out. Pre-release actually starts today, funny enough. Happy pre-release for Wheels of Vengeance fans. But the main set comes out in 2 weeks, and then that's kind of it for outside of some iconics. And then you have the Royal Flush Gang storyline OP in December. So this is by far the off season, as I call it. There's not really a lot of major tournaments. I know that there's supposed to be an Onslaught tournament, I believe, at PAX of some sort. I'm not able to go to that. There's no way I could fit PAX in there. I'm working to try to fit the next tournament, which I believe, or at least one of the next major tournaments, which I believe is Adepticon. I think I read that right. Yeah, Adepticon, I think, is going to be another tournament where Onslaught has a big presence, but that's still, that's in March. I got time to prepare for that, because trust me, when you go to Gen Con, you go to HeroClix World or WizKids World, well, it was HeroClix Worlds, that could drain the budget. So trying to save a little bit to be able to go to those other tournaments. But today's episode for Onslaught, I mentioned before, we're going to dive deep into the treasure, the loot. We have 3 sets now, thanks to the Frogmire Coven coming out. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Get your gear, little man. We're going fishing. And I mean now.
Alright, so let's talk treasure and loot and equipment and all of that. So you might be thinking, but WizDad, it's just so random, right? Because when you're playing the game, there's typically only like 3 to 4 chests out there that you can loot. And then when you loot, you get 3 random tokens and you could choose from the tokens. So like you may not even get something you want. Absolutely. You might end up with an item that, isn't the best. It's very hard to maximize who gets what, right? Now you can, don't forget, you can take actions, free actions to, swap items and whatnot. And we've heard at Worlds that they're probably making some changes to that, because I think the swapping of items is a little too easy. So they might make it like a bonus action instead of just like handing things off. But yeah, by all means, it is sometimes difficult to get what you want. You typically only get 2 of your 18 to 20 items that you bring per game. But you kind of want to make sure that of those 2, those are going to be 2 that you want. And at this point, since Frogmire Coven has released today, we now have 3 sets of items. We have the set from the core game, the base game, and then we have the set from the Benefactor, and then we have the set of items from Frogmire. Now, the core set comes with 20 items. 2 of those are the portcullis keys? I don't know how to say that word right. Portcullis keys. And those don't really count. Those are like a scenario specific thing. So don't worry about those. The other sets come with 18. So effectively think of it as a set of 18. But unfortunately, it's done really weird. Most scenarios, however, for Onslaught, have you remove those. And also have you remove the runes. Because some of the runes they have on there are also quite a bit too powerful. For example, the rune of protection. When you suffer damage from a champion, that damage is reduced by 2. That's pretty powerful, like incredibly powerful. Champions ignore rune of stealth. The champions ignore you while resolving their activations. You cannot be the target of their attacks that are not cone or AoE attacks. Now, champions, remember, this isn't mentioned a ton in the game, but champions are those higher level, like those monsters, those NPCs that are just much stronger. Like the dragon that is in the base game is a champion. I believe. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty confident they're champions. So these three all deal with champions: the Rune of Might, the Rune of Protection, and the Rune of Stealth. So they don't really do much, right? Like, they don't really play around much with the main game. So, for example, if you looked at the tournament document on how you create your roster, basically, in addition to characters, players must choose 15 item cards that match loot tokens 1 through 15 and record those choices on the roster. So while the base game has 20, while the Benefactor has 18, and the other game, the Frogmire Coven, has 18, you're only doing 15, and they have to match tokens 1 through 15. So that's what we're going to talk about, is let's go through 1 through 15 for each set of items, and let's talk about which one you would choose. One thing I will mention as a sidebar, when we were at Worlds, I didn't really think about this much at the time at all, but they had a package at Worlds that included a chest. It's like a plastic little chest about the size of, I don't know, like the size of a Pop-Tart, but think of it 3D as a chest. It's just the width and length of a Pop-Tart. So a little chest that could fit in your hand, and it opens and you can put something inside. At the time, totally didn't think it was that big of a deal. I was like, oh, okay. I even picked up an extra one. My friend who plays HeroClix, she was like, I don't want this. Do you just want to have it? And I said, sure. I love little containers. Absolutely. They're not big enough to hold like your character dials, your character cards. They can hold minis, but what they can hold, and I emphasize this, is they can hold the loot tokens. And it adds just a little element to your game, because you can open it when you get to a chest, you loot the chest, you get to open literally the treasure chest and pull out 3 tokens and then play with that. The prizing at Worlds, I think top 4, top 8, maybe even top 16 got a gold version of that chest. And I use it every time I play. I put my little loot item tokens in them. And it's nice. It works perfectly. So I think they sell those on their WizKids site, on the WizKids store. So if you got a little extra money, you want something fun, absolutely get it. It just adds a little element to the game. So we are going to go through the 3 sets. I am removing, obviously, the 16 through the end from both sets, because we don't obviously need to talk about those. I might talk about them a little bit for what they do, because some of them are interesting, like the Ion Stones. And then in the Frogmire Coven, 16 through 18 is basically these stones that help with cursed items, which I'll talk about. Cursed items were introduced in the new Frogmire set, so you may not know about them. I didn't talk about them that much before. But basically, they have a darker background to them. When they loot a chest, when a character loots a chest, if there's no event tokens, because some scenarios use event tokens, you reveal all the item tokens and gather the corresponding items. So when you're going through, you got your 3 loot tokens. You look at your 3 loot tokens, look at which items you assign to them, and then if one of them says cursed, the cursed item has to be chosen and is immediately equipped. Cursed items can't be unequipped, they can't be dropped or given to other characters, and when a character performs a basic attack, they must use a cursed weapon if able. Cursed weapons are interesting because some of them are actually quite powerful, but they usually all have a drawback. And we'll get to that actually, because there is a cursed weapon in I1. So I1, and we'll go in order of release. So that'll be the base game, then we'll talk about the Benefactor one, and then we'll talk about the Frogmire one. The base game has the Masterwork melee weapon. It's just +2 to hit with all your basic melee attacks. Pretty standard. Everybody's got a basic melee attack. It's good, right? Like, this is one that it's not bad to have. It's not exciting, just +2 puts you probably up at a +6 or 7. So that's useful, sure. Not as exciting as some of the others. The one from the Benefactor is the Blood Slick Battle Axe. It has a standard basic attack, or standard melee attack, I should say. Target one enemy at range 1, +5 to hit, or +6 for barbarians or clerics, and you deal 3 damage. A critical, which is an 18 through 20, +1 damage, and you and the target each gain bleeding. So it has a little bit of a detriment of you get bleeding as well as they do, but you deal 4 damage with a standard attack. There's not a lot out there that's not a cooldown ability that just deals 4 damage. That one, you could argue, if you need something that's more damage, if you have a barbarian or a cleric that you're really wanting to run out there and do more things, the Bloodslick Battle Axe might be better to have, whereas the Masterwork melee is better for everything else, I guess, for everyone that uses a basic melee attack. But this is where you really have to decide on, do I want to build an item deck for everyone, or do I want to build it to emphasize my characters that are probably going to be rushing out there to get the loot? Because obviously you're going to have some that are going to get to the loot faster than others, and now of course you can hand them off to whoever. So it depends on the scenarios, it depends on your team comp. Just don't forget that if you get an item and you equip it, it's not the end of the deal. You can take an action if you're next to your fellow character, and they can trade it. So don't forget trading exists. Sometimes I forget that it exists. The last item is from the Frogmire set. This one is actually a cursed item. It's the Axe of Bloodthirst. It's cursed, so that means if you pull an axe and you have this on your item list, you're going to have to use it. It's cursed. You cannot make ranged attacks. Axe of the Bloodlust, standard. It is a arcane, I believe. Target one enemy at range 1, +7 to hit, 3 damage. If you critical hit, you heal 2. So the detriment to this one is you can't make ranged attacks. So you get on someone like Fairloon, some of your range gravel shanks. This is bad, right? And you have to keep it. So you're probably not using this one in tournaments unless you are confident whoever's looting can deal with the ramifications. Now, if they get this, though, +7 to hit, 3 damage is good. Like, that's really good for, like, a basic melee attack, right? That is very good. And to heal from it. So, as long as you're careful, you can play with it. Otherwise, I'm probably sticking with the Masterwork melee from this set. Unless I'm feeling frisky and I really want to go with one of those with the Bloodslick Battle Axe. I'd have to really think about the cursed item and whether I want to take that chance or not. It would really depend on team comp, honestly. I1 is the bow. I2 is the bow. This one is Masterwork ranged weapon from the base set, +2 to hit with all your ranged attacks. Once again, very standard. It's good that they have these in case you don't want to have to think that much about team comps, is that you're able to kind of just say, okay, I want just the +2 to hit with my range. Sure. Nothing flashy, nothing amazing, but it's just solid. In the Benefactor set, you get the Oathsworn bow. This one is standard divine. Target one enemy at range 2 to 6, ignore cover, +5 to hit, 6 for druid or ranger, 2 damage, or 3 damage against monsters. And if you critically hit, you get +1 damage. I do like the Oathsworn bow a lot. 6 range is significant. If you look at a lot of your characters, a lot of them have just a range of 4. Outside of your devoted ranged role members, your members that have the ranged role, ranged attack, ranged fighter, whatever it's called. So Oathsworn is great for those that don't necessarily have that attack, don't have a strong ranged attack, because this would give them the capabilities of shooting from 6, which is great. 6 is a lot. They also ignore cover, +5 to hit and 2 damage. Like, the Oathsworn bow is arguably one of my favorite. I would definitely take that over the Masterwork one. But let's take a look at what the third one is. This is once again from Frogmire, the Dragon Sinew Bow. Standard physical attack, 1 enemy at range 2 to 4, +4 to hit, 3 damage. So it does 1 additional damage than the Oathsworn, but mine only 2 to 4 range. Critical, you may repeat this attack against a different target. Okay, so that changes things. If I critically hit, I get to make a second attack. If I were to choose, I'd probably lean more the Oathsworn bow still. That definitely, because you can't guarantee you're going to be, critically hitting. But if you're playing Harpers, where you have Sedona, who has a higher chance of making you critically hit, that's not bad. The Dragon Sinew bow might be better on a melee character that doesn't have a good range. Or someone like Basra, who doesn't have a range at all, because she has her mail, her flail, whatever it's called. Her spiked mace or something that has a range of 2. But both of those, I think, are definitely upgrades compared to the original. One thing I will say, though, this is probably a misprint. I hope it's a misprint. But if you look at I2, the back of I2 is actually an Ankh symbol, and it's supposed to be a bow, because it is the Dragon Sinew bow. I believe they're planning on fixing that. I think I read on the Discord that was a mistake. So that is supposed to be a bow. If you pull a bow, that's a bow. So let's blow through some more of these. I3 Masterwork Focus. This one is an Ankh, funny enough. And funny enough, on the Frogmire one, their focus is a bow on it. So 2 and 3 got their symbols mixed up. Don't freak out about it. Play it how it's supposed to be played. The bow goes on the bow, the focus goes on the focus. Masterwork Focus, +2 to hit with your cooldown abilities. Listen, nothing's worse than missing with your cooldown ability. As someone who played Staghard recently, who heals by hitting, you can either do his Cauterize ability. You have like a +5 to hit, but if you hit, you can either heal your character 3 or you damage an opponent 3 or something like that. Nothing's worse than trying to heal yourself and you miss. Just nothing is worse than that. So Masterwork Focus, very, very solid. The other one you have here, though, is the Talisman of Energy. This is from Benefactor. During the end phase, reduce one of your cooldown dials by an additional 1, or 2 dials by an additional 1 each for Monk, Sorcerer, or Wizard. Cooldowns are very powerful. You absolutely want to be able to cool them down faster, especially some of those bigger ones. Now, obviously, this does not work on once per game, because you don't use the cooldown thing. It just goes to the X. But for some of those, even reactions, this might be useful. Like, this is very useful, I would say. I would definitely step this up over the base game for sure. However, though, you do have the Ascendant Focus from Frogmire. And this one is tricky. This is definitely going to be scenario-based. Ascendant Focus, you cannot be affected by any condition tokens. So, this is where I'm talking about you really have to look at your roster and what you're bringing. Because when I'm looking at both of these, if my scenario deals with a lot of poison, and you might see this more, you saw this more in the Frogmire Coven scenario, where there are other conditions involved. And goodness knows, if you look at the condition token list, there's a ton of them. Burning, marked, cursed. There's so many conditions. So if you want to play more defensive, take the Ascendant Focus, that means this character can't get any condition tokens. Now, this also means they don't get their own condition tokens, so if they get a bonus, they don't get that. They can't be affected by any condition tokens. So just keep that in mind. But if you're playing a scenario where that's, a lot of conditions, I would lean towards that. Otherwise, Talisman of Energy is fantastic. Absolutely choose that. Next, we have the armor that doesn't have sleeves. This is I4. Masterwork armor from the base set is just +2 armor. I mean, that's okay. Nothing to write home about. Pretty solid. I will say, if your character's got like a 12 defense, 13 defense, I would consider just giving this object to someone with a higher defense. Because taking a 12 to the 14 doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't really change much. Taking a 16 or a 17 to a 19 does. Like, that makes it much harder to hit. You would rather something that's somewhat hard to hit, even harder to hit, as opposed to something that's pretty easy to hit to just still easy to hit, if that makes sense. The Benefactor one is the Wing Cuirass, +1 to movement, and +1 defense to Druid, Monk, or Ranger. When moving, ignore the effects of elevated, hindering, and impassable terrain. This is an amazing item, especially for a Frogmire, because Frogmire, remember, has a ton of water, and water stinks. It is hindering for movement. You have to take double movement points in order to move through it. The Winged Cuirass stops that. When moving, ignore the effects of elevated, hindering, and impassable terrain. So, Winged Cuirass, if you're playing any of the scenarios on Frogmire, absolutely take it. It is pretty good. Try to put it on a Druid, Monk, or Ranger to get that kind of +1 defense. And then the last one is Anti-Magic Armor. Suffer half damage from arcane and divine attacks. This one is okay. Keep in mind that it's round down. If a lot of characters are doing 3 damage, so that would take it just to 2. A lot of times it's 2 damage, take it down to 1. That's okay. It really depends on if you're... I mean, this one is really subjective. I feel like you take the Cuirass most of the time. The Anti-Magic Armor is okay. It's just whether or not you think if the current competitive scene has just a lot of like red wizards who do a lot of arcane. But if you're going to get something with a lot of physical, this doesn't do anything for you, or do very little for you. Up next is the shield. We have the arrow catching shield. When defending against an attack from an enemy beyond range 1, gain +4 defense. Very solid. Can't really go wrong with this one. It's a range attack, you get +4 defense. That one you could put on a spellcaster, because +4 is significant. You've got the Bulwark Shield for the Benefactor, +1 defense, +2 for Cleric or Fighters. Fighters may treat this as an accessory instead of armor. And I should have mentioned that. Keep in mind when you're equipping things, you can only have 1 in each slot. And the slots are obviously armor, weapon, and accessory. I believe you could have 2 accessories. I might be wrong. But keep that in mind that for the Bulwark Shield, it is treated as a accessory for fighters instead of armor. So you can have armor and the shields. That is perfectly fine. It also has Shove. Bonus action, melee. Move an adjacent non-champion enemy 1 space away from you. This move does not trigger reactions. So this will not work against like the big guys, like the big NPCs. You can't just like shove a dragon back, right? But if you're going against your fellow person, you can, shove them back, I believe. So not bad. Like really not bad. It depends if you have a Cleric or Fighter to equip this on. I think it's pretty good to put it on a Cleric or Fighter for the +2, and if you've already got armor. But, I'm kind of leaning more towards the arrow catching shield. Let's see, from Frogmire, we have the Shield of the Ram, +1 to defense. Batter, it's a movement. Move up to your speed. Then if you moved at least 2 spaces, target 1 enemy at range 1. +6 to hit, 1 damage. If hit, the target has slowed. That's very good. Getting kind of an additional attack out of your movement is very good. It doesn't Doesn't change up, like, doesn't mean you have to go half speed or anything like that. It just purely says move up to your speed, and then if you've moved at least 2, you get to target 1 at range 1, and you get to hit them, basically. I love it. If you hit, the target gets slowed. That's even better. That works for a lot of characters like Drom from Cell Swords, stuff like that. I should clarify, I mentioned again, it is 1 per each type: weapon, armor, and accessory. You can't have 2 accessories. I was thinking of some other game, but yeah, just keep that in mind. Out of the 3 shields, I'm probably leaning Shield of the Ram. I like that more. Maybe for Red Wizards, I'll choose the arrow catching one because a lot of Red Wizards have lower defense. But Shield of the Ram is very solid, especially on a melee character that may not have a good move and attack. Being able to take a move action to still move and damage and then hit again. Like, I'm looking at Draw, I'm thinking Shield of the Ram is great because he gets bonuses for people that have been, I believe, slowed or have some sort of condition on them. Pretty good. Vendra's another one. Vendra from Red Wizards, I believe, gets XP when they give a condition token. So being able to move and give a condition token and attack and give another condition token, you're looking at 2 XP, potentially 3 if you hit them, because you hit, given it, like, you could get a lot of XP on Vendra with the Shield of the Ram, but there's probably other things you want for that. Up next we are up to I6. I believe that's correct, right? Yes, I6. This is the armor with, like, looks more like a finer mail armor. The first one is adamantine armor for the base set, +1 armor. Critical effects cannot be resolved against you. That's really good. Critical effects, as the game has expanded in certain characters, critical effects have gotten kind of nutty. So being able to just kind of negate some of those. Nothing's worse is when you get hit by Gravelshanks, who taps you once, hits you again, and they crit. And having Sedona or Chloe being able to boost it up and increasing your chances of critting, adamantine armor can be clutch. From Benefactor, you have armor of the warding, +1 defense, 2 for fighter or paladin. Reduce the damage you take from all arcane and divine attacks by 1 to a minimum of 1. That's alright. Yeah, I mean, reducing damage is great. Some enemies only deal, like some characters, like Javika with her ranged ability, because it's a bonus, I believe it only deals 1 damage anyway. So being able to, but it's melee, so it won't work for this. Being able to reduce some arcane damage would be very useful against some Red Wizards. Same with Divine. I think I would still lean towards the adamantine armor, but let's see what Frogmire has to offer. Frogmire gives you the Brimstone Breastplate. This is cursed, so you have to equip it. +2 to defense, solid. +2 to hit with your melee attack. Reduce your movement by 1. This one, I think, as opposed to the Blood Axe, or whatever the first one was called, that took away your ranged attack, this one is much more manageable. If you've got a fairly fast character, now movement is arguably one of the strongest stats in the game. High movement is very important for objectives. However, I would say just the +2 to armor, the +2 to hit with your melee. On the right character, this could be really good. The question is do you want to risk picking this up and it going on someone like Lasael or Staghar or Zook, someone with high movement, who's really not going to be using their melee attack a ton? So it's risky. I think it's a risk you could take. I think you're perfectly fine taking it. It's just something to keep in mind. Going to I7, we have the armor without sleeves. Again, this is like a leather-looking armor. The armor in Elven Kind is base. Enemies cannot take reactions after your moves. This includes your opponent, like your opponent's characters, because a lot of monsters don't have reactions. Reactions are powerful. Most of them are simply, though, I mean, the only ones that really count are your opportunity attacks or your like combat reflex type attacks. You can debate about whether you think that's useful or not. I don't know. Let's look at some of these others. Conjured armor from Benefactor, +3 defense, +5 for sorcerer, warlock, or wizard. That's really good. KO this card if you suffer damage from an attack. So this one's interesting, just having that +5 to hit. +5 to your defense if you put this on someone with like 13 defense, taking up to an 18. That could be really good. Like, that could be really, really solid. But just keep in mind, you lose that if you get hit. And then this one is interesting. Now, this one's marked as cursed. Like, the back of the card looks like cursed, but it's not. It's called the Many-Pocketed Vestment. If you have this equipped and have leveled up, you may utilize an additional level up ability. If I'm picking out of the 3, I think this one could be insanely powerful. The level up abilities, let's be fair, aren't game breaking. Some of them are much better than others. Like, I believe Zook has one where he does an additional damage if he begins attack someone that hasn't activated yet. There's a few out there that, like, a healing one. There's a couple that have a lot of level up abilities have one-offs. Some level up abilities you want to both, and they just don't fit. Having this could be very useful. Now, one thing I would point out, it says if you have this equipped and have leveled up, you may utilize an additional level up ability. There might be some nuance to this to where you have it equipped on someone that's about to level up, and if it's a one-off ability, like most level up are, you have this equipped, you use that level up ability, you're using both, you use that one-off, so you're down to 1. You could hand this off to somebody and have them equip it, so that way they level up and they do something as well. I'm not sure if that makes a ton of sense, but what's interesting is, once again, it has the black cursed item thing. It would kind of make sense if it was cursed to an extent, because not being able to trade this off, trading it off might be a little too powerful, but that might be something to look into. But right now, it does not have cursed on the card, so maybe they originally thought it would be, and it's not. But for that slot, I would probably lean more towards the Many-Pocketed Vestment. The Conjured Armor, I once again, giving +5 to a sorcerer might be great, but at the same time, that takes their 12 or a 13 to an 18, which isn't necessarily too hard to hit. Up next, we have the first sword. This is the cool-looking sword symbol. We have good old Flame Tongue from the base set, also from the preview kit, same one. Standard arcane attack, 1 enemy at range 1, +6 to hit, 3 damage. If you critical, that takes it up to a 5 damage. Flame Tongue is just solid for any melee character. Solid for almost any character, really. Because sometimes you can't help but getting in melee combat with somebody, and having that standard attack could be very useful, because some spellcasters just don't have a great melee attack. The Benefactor has the Sword of Infinite Screams, which is an awesome name. Standard, arcane, target 1 enemy at range 1, +6 to hit, 7 for Barbarian or Fighter, 2 damage. Critical is an 18 through 20, +1 damage. Roll 1 d20, 18 through 20, +1 damage, and roll again. So if you crit and you keep rolling every time you crit, you roll another d20. If it's an 18 or 20, add another damage, roll again, add another damage. But like, it could, I believe it just keeps going until you stop rolling 18s or 20s on that d20. That's interesting. I don't know how much that'll come into play, like actually doing that much damage. Just keep in mind, 2 damage on a Barbarian is probably typical. Like, most fighters have 2 damage on their melee. Most characters have 2 damage. This is just kind of boosting that hit a little bit and then adding that potential of doing more damage. But I don't know if I'd necessarily like that extra potential. Like, that's neat, but rolling an 18 or 20 is unlikely. And unless you're playing Harpers, right, that have that one capability. Then you have the Reckless Blade, which is cursed from Frogmire, +4 to hit with your melee, -2 to defense. You're not playing this one. +4 to hit to your melee is not great. You would never play that one. It's really up to the base set or the Benefactor. As much cool as a Sword of Infinite Screams is, I kind of like just the +6 and the 3 damage from Flame Tug. Old reliable. I'm probably sticking with that. Up next is just looks like a short sword. We have the Dancing Sword from the base set. Standard melee, one enemy at range 1 +6 to hit, 2 damage. Critical, make another melee attack with this weapon and a range, I think it's supposed to be at a range of 1 to 5. So cool. You make a range. Once again, it's kind of dependent on critical. I don't love things that are dependent on criticals to be useful, but who knows? Maybe that's something. The Singing Sword from the Benefactor is basically the same thing. It's arcane though. Target one enemy at range 1 +6 to hit, 2 damage. Critical 18 through 20 for Bard or Paladin. Choose one. Each enemy at range 1 to 3 suffers 1 damage, or each friendly at range 0 to 3 heals 1. Absolutely, I'm looking at the Singing Sword more than I am the Dancing Sword. I like that critical more. Sure, you get an additional attack, you could do 2 more damage, but the Singing Sword, if you hit that on an 18 or 20 for Bard or Paladin, you're potentially dealing 1 to every enemy within 3, or you're healing 1. That's huge. Healing is pretty darn strong in this game. So right now I'm leaning Singing Sword. You do have the Serpentine Fang from Frogmire. Enemies hit by your attack gain poison. Ooh. Okay, now I'm thinking here, because poisoned. So the reason I'm thinking is because the other ones require critical hits. 18 through 20 isn't the easiest to hit, but can be done. But Serpentine Fang, given poison, just on hits, is pretty good. Poisoned, it's enduring, so it doesn't just fade. A character can only have 1 poison token. When a poison character activates, they just take 1 damage. Then roll 1 die, 11 through 20, remove the poison. If a poison character is healed, remove the poison. So it's like Burning and some of these others. At the beginning of their activation, they just take 1. I think I like Serpentine Fang more than the others because it's just a guarantee. It's just guarantee you hit, they're poisoned. So they're just taking an extra damage. That's just good. If you want to play a little bit more risky, not risky, but you want to play the game of chance a little bit more, then sure, you could do, the Singing Sword for that 18 through 20. But I'm also thinking about characters that hit. I'm thinking of characters like Vendra. Again, Vendra, which quite quickly is becoming one of my favorite red wizards. Vendra has a melee attack that is a cone of 2. So she could potentially hit 3 characters. I think it's a she. 3 characters. If she has the Serpentine Fang, enemies hit by your basic melee, your little melee attack, gain poison. She could potentially give 3 characters just poisoned. And you gain 1 XP after you cause a mini to gain a condition token. And so she's going to level up really quickly. And she's great because her level up ability, like Gather and Swarm, after you hit with a basic attack, you may move the target 1 space. So being able to poison them and manipulate them a bit, that's pretty good. So I'm probably leaning Serpentine Fang Bow. I'm reading the bow for the next one. Serpentine Fang Blade. Up next is I-10. We're almost there. Vicious Longbow. This is the quiver and bow symbol. Base set, standard melee, 1 enemy at range 2 to 5, +6 to hit, 2 damage. Critical 19 through 20, +1 damage. Longbow's really good because of the range 5. Once again, not a lot of characters have a strong ranged ability. Vendra, for example, I just mentioned, doesn't have a ranged ability. Her melee is a cone of 2, so she kind of has a range, but she doesn't have a range one outside of that. So her getting the Vicious Longbow is nice to be able to have that 2 to 5, 2 damage, +6 to hit. So that's just solid right out of the gate. Vicious Shortbow from the Benefactor set is only a 2 to 4 range, +6 to hit, 2 damage. It is 2 to 5 for Bard or Rogue. Critical, though, is 16 through 20. That you have a decent chance of hitting a 16. on your die. That's probably what you have to hit a lot of things, right? Like a 16 anyway. So like that's a pretty decent chance of 16 to 20 on the D20 die. The target gains slowed. Slowed is very good. Their movement becomes 2. Awesome. Now this one wouldn't be as good as Vendor because Vendra's critical already gets them slowed. So not as good on Vendra. But everything's not about Vendra. We do have the Heart-Seeking Arrow from Frogmire. This is a once per game effect. So standard. One enemy at range 2 to 5 plus 6 to hit, 4 damage, critical plus 1. So dealing 4 damage from range of 2 to 5. Very solid 4 damage. That's almost half a dial for a lot of characters. A lot of characters have 8. Some of your squishier characters have 8. So that's not bad. I'd probably still lean the Vicious Longbow. That 2 damage, 2 to 5 range, plus 6 to hit is great on certain characters that just lack a ranged attack. Up next is the Glaive. Magic Glaive, standard divine, one enemy at range 1 to 2, plus 6 to hit, 2 damage. After an enemy at range 1 to 2 moves, if it moved a space farther away from you, make a melee attack against that character, critical plus 1 damage. This is not tied to a reaction. So this is not taking your reaction, just strictly an enemy at range 1 to 2 moves. If they move a space farther away from you, make it an attack. That is great. Giving yourself kind of your own opportunity attack as you equip this is amazing. That is very, very good. You would probably be happy to have a Magic Glaive. Reaping Scythe, standard melee, one enemy at range 1 to 2, plus 5 damage. Plus 5 to hit, 2 damage, heal 1. It has the same wording as the other one, which is after an enemy at range 1 to 2 moves, if it moved farther away from you, make a attack against the enemy. Though it has a critical 18 through 20 for Barbarian or Rogue, the target gains bleeding. So the Magic Glaive has a plus 1 to hit, but the Reaping Scythe has less to hit, but you heal 1, and they gain bleeding if you critically hit. This one is kind of a toss-up. Inherently, I want to say the Reaping Scythe is better because you just heal from it, but you might want that plus 6 as opposed to a plus 5, depending on who you're, how the scenario. I mean, you don't really get to choose your items. Your items are what they are on the roster, but if you look at your tournament scenarios ahead of time and you're going against maybe some NPCs that have an 18 defense, at 16, 17 defense, something high, you might want the Magic Glaive over the Reaping Scythe. Otherwise, I feel like the Reaping Scythe is just inherently better. But you do have the Frogmire one. It's cursed. Standard, arcane, one enemy at range 1 to 3, plus 4 to hit, 3 damage. If you miss with this weapon, suffer 1 damage. Critical is plus 1 damage. That's not bad. 1 to 3 as opposed to 1 to 2. You don't have that kind of free opportunity attack, but you deal 3 damage from it. I'm probably not reaching for it, to be honest. I think the Reaping Scythe is good, and even just the Magic Glaive is solid on its own. Up next, we are up to I-11. It's the Ring of Regeneration. At the start of your action, heal 1. Can't complain. Probably don't want this on your support piece or something that's in the back and never getting attacked. You probably want this on one of your frontline characters that are going to take more damage, but good. You have the Ring of Wishes, which has 3 charges. After a friendly character at range 0 to 5 rolls a d20 for any effect or attack, if the result is not a 1, before any other effects, you may remove 1 charge to re-roll that die and use the new result. So it's kind of like if you've played HeroClix or Probability Control, it allows you the opportunity to re-roll a roll if it's bad, except if it's 1. If it's 1, too bad. That's powerful. You get to do that 3 times. There's no way to recharge it. So being able to re-roll a d20 3 times in a game where you roll 2 d20, there are times where you're just going to miss and you wish you could re-roll one of them. It's good. I don't know if it's better than the healing once per turn, Let's take a look at what the Ring of Absorption does, though, from Frogmire. 2 charges. When you're damaged by a non-adjacent enemy, spend 1 charge to suffer half that damage. You know, these rings aren't amazing. I may be looking at them wrong, but I'm probably leaning towards the healing, the Ring of Regeneration. Being able to reroll a d20 is nice. You're already rolling 2d20 when you're attacking, so your probs are pretty decent, but if you happen to roll good on one and you roll a 1 on the other, well, you can't reroll a 1. So, you know, it's kind of... It's good, but I don't know if I'd lean the Ring of Regeneration. The Ring of Absorption, being able to add just half damage. With so many attacks being out there, so many doing 2 damage, 3 damage, only taking 1 could be nice. But we saw armor that does that also. I feel like I would want the healing as opposed to having damage. Having damage sounds great, but with a lot of things doing 1, 2 to 3 damage, not a ton doing more than that outside of like a Shocking Grasp from Lament. I don't know if I reach for the Ring of Absorption. Up next, we have a potion, the Fiery Potion symbol, I-13. Potion of Fire Breath, Standard Arcane, Cone of 3, plus 7 to hit, 2 damage. Get rid of this card if you suffer damage, critical, plus 1 damage, and you get rid of this card. So just a Cone of 3 is great, being able just to spit out 2 damage to everyone in a Cone 3 is fine. A 3 cone is huge. So the problem is you run the risk of targeting your own characters, because there's nothing that says that they won't get caught up in this. So it's great. I think it's great. But I think we need to look at the other ones first, because there are some better ones. Volatile Flask, bottoms up. Bonus action, it's once per game. Roll a d20. 1 through 5, you gained poisoned, so that's bad. 6 through 10, gain 1+ movement during this activation and invisible. That's great. 11 through 15, each enemy at range 1 to 5 gains slowed and weakened. That's awesome. And then 16 through 20, you heal 5 and you gain 3 XP. That's huge. I'm probably leaning Volatile Flask because even if you roll the 1 to 5, you gain a poison. You take 1 damage, right? That stinks, but you can kind of get out of that. Either you have someone that can heal and remove the poison, something that can remove a condition token like Molly Fairhill from Cell Swords can do that, or you just eat the 1 damage. But still, that is only what, 20% chance, 80% chance you've got a good roll. 6 to 10, plus 1 movement and invisible is great. So yeah, I'm probably leaning Volatile Flask over the fire breathing, to be honest. The other one is Elixir of Water Breathing. From Frogmire, you ignore the effects of Water Train. That's good, depending on scenario. If you're going someplace with a lot of water, that's great. But most of the time, you're having to spend so many turns to get up to the loot that getting that at that point, you're like, okay, great. I got it now. I would have loved it before. But it doesn't go away. So if you're playing scenarios where items follow you, like you get to keep one item going from one scenario to the next, that's not bad, especially in like the Frogmire Coven scenarios where you can keep that one going into the next water map, knowing, hey, I've ignored water terrain. 2 more to go. We have the Invisibility Powder from I-14. Apply Powder, bonus action. It's once per game. Gain Invisible. And that's kind of what Volatile did. Invisible. Monsters ignore you while resolving their activations. You cannot be the target of attacks that are not cone or splash damage attacks, like area of effect. Invisible is very, very strong. There's some scenarios where the monster might be invisible or you're invisible. It's annoying. I know the one Zentarum Bard, for example, goes invisible, and there's not a ton of cone and area of effect attacks out there that aren't cooldown abilities. So, Invisible strong. This could be very potent on the right character. Next, you have Displacement Dust. This one, 2 charges. Throw Dust as a bonus action. Spend 1 charge. Target 1 character or non-champion monster at range 0 to 1. Make a 3 space warp. essentially teleport with the target. So you get to basically bonus action, use it on someone, either yourself or another character, and you get to just warp 3 as a bonus action, which was, I believe, what Minstrel does, right? So being able to kind of just do that on your own and have 2 charges is really good. Displacement Dust is great depending on the scenario. So I would probably pick this one currently over the Invisibility Powder, just because extra movement. Once again, movement is probably one of the strongest things in this game. Having an extra 3 for bonus action could be clutch. But you do have the Sand of Entropy from Frogmire. Sprinkle Sand, bonus action is once per game. Though it does have a little cooldown thing, which is... Oh no, the cooldown is once per game. Target, one target at range 1 to 2, plus 7 to hit. If hit, the target must drop an item. So that is very interesting, and depending on the scenario, especially if someone gets a very powerful item, that makes it very hard for them to, like... This one is more reactive than useful. Like, you would get it and you would hope that your opponent would have something, right? But compared to the Displacement Dust, I feel like you don't play this unless you're playing a scenario where you're counting on your opponent to have really good items. Finally, we've got the last 3, which is... which this one also has the wrong symbol on it, funny enough. Did the other one have the wrong symbol on it? Did they get the backward symbols again? Yeah, it looks like they got the backward symbols again on their potion for Frogmire. Oh no, goodness. Because Frogmire has the Elixir of Water Breathing for I-13, but I-15 has the Potion of Resurrection, but they have the wrong symbols on them. I don't know if that was intentional or not, because Elixir, Potion, right? They could be the same thing. I'll have to look into that. I hadn't even thought about that. So first off, though, for the Potion, I-15 base set, you have the Quaff Potion, which is just heal 3. Once per bonus action, you just heal 3. Pretty standard, right? Solid choice. You can't go wrong with that one. Having the option to just pass that to someone and they heal 3 is great. Jar of Pickled Eggs, I should say, way different than Jar of Pickles, is better and worse than the Potion of Healing. Potion of Healing allows you to just heal 3. If you don't need to heal 3, you need to just heal 1. You want to be able to spread out the healing. Jar of Pickled Eggs has 3 charges. Eat an egg. Bonus action, spend 1 charge, heal 1. So it doesn't go away until you run out of charges, and even then it doesn't go away, it just doesn't have charges. So you could heal 1, pass it off to someone else, they could heal as well the next turn. Might be better. It depends on if you like just healing 3 or you just like healing 1. But bonus actions are kind of precious sometimes, so if you're thinking of, oh, heal 1 this turn, heal 1 next turn, you might need those bonus actions for something. And then this one. This might be the better one of all of them. Frogmire's coming through. We haven't had a lot of Frogmire ones that I feel like are better than the Benefactor ones. The Benefactor ones I feel like have been the best. But this one might take the cake. This one's Potion of Resurrection. You can guess what it does. Standard action, once per game. Target 1 defeated character at range 1, and you heal it 2. Once you lose a character, the game starts kind of steamrolling a little bit, depending on the scenario. But once 1 goes down, losing a whole character, a whole set of actions, stinks. Having the Potion of Resurrection able to bring someone back, even if that's only at 2 health, there's nothing to say that they can't heal that back up somehow. But having an effect that brings someone back is very powerful. This is like one of the only things that allows you to do that. So I would probably bring the Potion of Resurrection, because if I lose somebody, I want to be able to have the capabilities of bringing them back, because sometimes bad luck happens. At Worlds, I had a scenario where I got shot with gravel shanks and they critted and they had the Chloe damage, and like my Staghar, who had like 8 health, I think he was either instantly taken out, like they did just 8 damage to me, which is obscene, or they got me down to like 1 health, maybe 2. So being able to just potentially bring him back and like give another go, very, very useful. So I would probably lean the Potion of Resurrection. If you don't want to risk it, the Potion of Healing is just fine. All three of these options, I would say, are pretty darn good. That's it. We have other objects that are, beyond I-15. They're specific to each individual one. Like you have the Beozor, like I said, of curse breaking, that's really for cursed items, which you would think you'd want those in the game, but maybe there's just not enough time for that. But either way, items are very important in this game. I assume going forward, every expansion, every like scenario kit will have more and more items. They're a very cool concept you really don't think about too much when you're building teams. You're like, oh, they're cool, you get loot and whatnot. But you should think about them. You should think about what you're playing with. If you're just starting out with Onslaught, the base set is perfectly fine. I would emphasize, go ahead and get the Benefactor set. It is cheap. It's like $20, maybe $30, but I think $20. Because it doesn't have any minis in it. It's just literally the tokens, the scenarios, and the cards. And the monster cards. So don't worry about having to spend a ton of money for it. It is cheap. The Benefactor items, I would emphasize, is I think in base-wise better than the base game. Frogmire, because of the cursed items, because of what's in it, there's a couple that are better than a Benefactor. The Ascendant Focus, not being able to be affected by condition tokens. Shield of the Ram, I mentioned, being able to just have another attack and deal damage while you're moving is great. There's quite a few in here that are very good, but not as, I would say, as a whole better than Benefactor. But that's only 3 sets. It's cool to have 3 sets that are just better, or that gives you options. As someone who comes from HeroClix, I love options. And I love the fact that Onslaught's not collectible, so I don't have to go hunting down for every item. I could just buy this set, and I have everything that I need. So that's going to do it for this episode, Gee Whiz. This went quite a bit longer than I anticipated, but this is a subject I feel pretty good on. It's I like items. I like their unique mechanic in the game. A lot of times victory points are tied to loot in a chest, so you're going out there and getting an item, and you could probably, once again, do perfectly fine with just the base game. But if you want to elevate your game, you want to be able to maybe do a little bit better, or add that unique effect that gives you a little bit of an advantage, get the Benefactor set. I already said get Frogmire. You could do fine with base game and Frogmire. That's great also. But I think you would do good with either, and being able to just pick and choose and mix and match and figure out what's a good set for your team. Because some things would be good for Red Wizards, some would be good for many arrows, etc., etc. But thank you for listening to Gee Whiz. Friday, we've got HeroClix. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about this time. There's a lot to talk about with Wheels of Vengeance. We've seen more of the set. At this point, I might be able to go ahead and do a set review on Friday, because we're very, very close. We may have all of the figures and legacy cards. So we'll see. If we get everything by Friday, I'll go ahead and do a set review and go ahead and get that as quick as possible for when you're doing your pre-releases or your releases. But other than that, you guys have a wonderful Wednesday and Thursday, and I will see you guys on Friday. Have a great day.